Welcome, everyone, to the first subcommittee meeting for the Subcommittee on Training, Recruitment, Hiring, Retention, and Promotion. I'm happy for everyone to be here. My name is Sarah Omar, and I will be the facilitator for this evening. For those of the members of the public, welcome. And we are excited for a first kickoff meeting to share a very enriching discussion. I will now just walk through the agenda for today's meeting and just walk through what we're planning for today. Just bear with me 1 second. So in terms of what we want to accomplish today, we really want to just clarify what are the goals of this subcommittee and discuss key pieces of information needed for deliberation. I just as a recap, like our hope is that we can identify really clear and concise recommendations that we can submit to the city when it comes to training, recruitment, hiring, retention, and promotion. Just wanted to kind of quickly recap our discussion agreements that these are the same that have been walked through for every task force meeting. Just please speak for yourself about what is important to you. Be respectful, candid, but also like honor the agenda and honor others' perspectives as well. In terms of the agenda, we want to just kind of open up an opportunity for the public. So Ishmael, I'll probably hand it to you if there's any members of the public that would like to address anything to the subcommittee. And then want to spend a good amount of time getting to know each other. So going around a circle and saying in one sentence why you were interested in being part of this subcommittee. And then also what direct experiences you've faced that you had with the Elgin Police Department regarding training, recruitment, hiring, retention, and promotion. And for those who've been in the previous subcommittee meeting, it's the same structure, but just really want to kind of get to know each other on a more deeper level. And then we would like to discuss the scope of work and kind of confirm is the goals that we want to and the objectives of this subcommittee kind of align with the scope of work in the ordinance. We really want to make sure that we're not missing anything there. Don't think we'll need a break, and then we can kind of discuss and confirm any key information that we are needed that we can help provide for the group to make sure that we can address any of the goals and objectives that are needed. And then we'll just wrap up in next steps. And one of the next steps is kind of identifying a standing time for this group, whether it's this time and just the frequency. Is there anything that we would like to add to this agenda? No? Okay, so I will stop share so we can see everyone. And I wanted to kind of open it up to the group. Again, asking why you're interested in joining this group and any lived experiences that you would feel comfortable sharing.
I'll go.
Go ahead.
All right. So I'll start with my direct experience with the police. I've been involved with a couple of the sessions that they've had within the community. How to, what happens, kind of understanding what happens when they're doing a stop and understanding what they do and the dangers that they're facing by also being in some role play activities that they've had with some local events that they've had in the community. Also being a part of the Citizens Advisory Board when it first started. So I had some inside experience with that, with the former chief of police. Why I chose this, the training and development lane is it is my profession by trade, so I do have a passion for training and development. And I would really like to be able to understand the process of their training. And is there ways that we can make some suggestions to have some improvement when they're correlating their training with their recruitment? So that is my main lane of being here. And then also understanding when they're doing their screening, like who's assessing the mental health and what does that look like? So that we're able to educate the community so they have better understanding.
Thank you, Penny. Anyone who else would like to share? And we're going around in a circle, so hoping everyone can have a chance to kind of share.
I guess since I went
share.
last and go ahead.
Oh, sorry. One, I want to say that there are no public members of the public at all currently. So there should, from what I know, there is no public comment, just so we can get that there. And second of all, so when we were looking at all the subcommittees, I was obviously very interested in all of them, but this was the one that I was predominantly more interested in because this is one that I was very vocal about throughout prior to my appointment to this committee or to the task force. I feel like it's really important to understand what the methods of recruitment are for our police department. I think it's essential to how we advertise and brand ourselves as a community because of the fact that we also did have a police involved shooting, not that far away from where we are now. It really sparks to the overall culture of what it is to be a police officer and how we are bettering that culture within our own respective community. So I'm really primarily interested in the recruitment aspect of it and also the retention aspect of it. How has the leadership changed? How has our community changed within the police department? What are major cultural shifts that have happened in the last decade or so that are causing people to leave and are causing people to stay and are really influencing how our police officers are communicating with the community. There's all these different aspects that are really procedural that I really want to look into. I think that's primarily what I want to really understand. And also who are the heavy hitters when it comes to the recruitment and when it comes to the hiring of these police officers, and also the ones that are in charge of the terminations and the promotions. I think it's really important to understand who those heavy hitters are as well.
Joshua, I think you were going next.
Sure. I went last in the last one, so maybe I should go sooner than later. I think training is a key thing, and I come at this, as I said in the other group, as both a minister and an academic, and understanding that the way you're trained shapes the way you see the world and how you experience it and how you act within it. And so both the expectations for performance as well as the skill sets that we give our officers. My goal ultimately in all of this is to say that our officers should go home at night and feel safe, and the people that they encounter should have that same opportunity. And so the better skill sets that we give them, as well as how we evaluate and promote, all of those things come in together. And so seeing the world in a particular way matters, and how do we help our police to see the world in a way that's not necessarily always adversarial.
And is there anything from your personal experience that you were like, this is something I wish could have been done, or this what's been done is great, kind of just need to keep it up from when it comes to training or any of the other categories?
So I'm a transplant to Elgin. I've only been around 12, 13 years now, which is hard to believe. And so most of my experiences are outside the Elgin PD. I can say that there are times of interaction where clearly, as who was I sharing the story with, being pulled over and watching several officers drive by, right, and not even take a stop, right, as an officer was engaging me, asking me for my license and those kind of things, right? So recognizing even in the training and then seeing what is a threat changes based off of just who I am as a person, right? As a white guy. So that's important to note. And so how those things play out in the training and getting people to ask the questions of what's going on here is key.
Thank you for sharing.
I can go next. So piggybacking off a lot of what everyone has already said, I think that who you hire, how you train them, how you've recruited them, and how you retain them speaks a lot to culture and what kind of culture you're building in any organization, whether that's a for-profit business or a charitable organization or a police department. And in my world, in my role, I do a lot of hiring, a lot of training, and similar to Penelope, that is something I'm passionate about. And so that's something I'm interested in. I'm really interested as well in the retention, looking at, I think you learn the most from the people who've left you. And I'm really interested to see what information can be gleaned from some of the individuals on the police department who've decided not to continue with the police department in Elgin. And that's a big motivator for being on this task force or on the subcommittee. My engagement with the police is primarily through my work. The department that I run at the university I work at manages most of the after hours response with our student body. And most of the experiences that I've had with the Elgin Police Department and the police officers that have responded when we've called them have been very positive. But there has been moments where, especially in the mental health realm, and I mentioned this in the last subcommittee meeting I was in, where I think, and again, I know they've done a lot of improvement in this area. There was not a negative experience, just maybe one that could have used more training or even more partnership with outside entities and individuals who are specifically trained to work with crisis intervention. And so that, as far as personal experience goes, is a big motivator for also being on this committee and speaking into how that training happens and the kinds of people and individuals and requirements that there is for individuals that the Elgin Police Department hires.
Thank you for sharing.
I will go next if I may.
Yes, please do.
To just go in a different direction, since I echo everything that everybody else has said. I'm interested in the content of the training, especially when it pertains to attitudes and perceptions. Whenever I hire for attitude, not aptitude. What does that actually mean? And if you have somebody's life in your hands, does attitude matter more than aptitude, or really should aptitude matter? These are questions that we need to ask. When do you want somebody with the skills, and when do you want somebody with the heart? I still see that being a police officer is one of those classic jobs that is perennially there and available. I've been in grade schools. I'm a librarian. We do events at various schools, story times, whatever. And, every once in a while, to prepare for career day, you see the poster where all the kids say what they want to be. And police officer and firefighter are always up there. Remember when, you had nurse, teacher, baker, that sort of thing. Well, now those posters also include YouTube influencer, yoga instructor, consultant. I have no idea what that means. YouTube influencer. I bless you. I hope you do well in this world as a YouTube influencer. I guess it's a career path. But anyway, police officers are still held in a certain amount of respect and esteem. And I want to make sure that their training reflects that and that they deserve that respect and esteem. You know, they serve and protect. Who are they serving? Who are they protecting? How does their training reflect that? And if I may go in this direction, a lot of police departments in recent years, so many horrific incidents that are racially driven. Is there an implicit racial component to their training, or are they simply hiring people that have that built in? You know, I have not seen any police department's training program. I don't know if they're as bold as to say, hey, these are the people that we profile. Or is it that implicitly you are hiring people that are going to go a certain direction? I don't know. I'm not accusing the Elgin Police Department or any other department. I'm just wondering, because with George Floyd, with other cases, historically, it comes up over and over and over. And why is that? Is that a part of the training? Is that a part of the culture? Is it a part of just who we are as a society, as a nation? And these are the people that we draw from. So some of those bigger picture questions, I think, would be, you know, interesting to get into. And, you know, how is the police department addressing things like implicit bias, or not so implicit bias? I know that the Elgin Police Department is addressing these issues. We've partnered with them on several book discussions on anti-racist titles, you know, such as The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, White Fragility. So they've been reading up, you know, but how do you change a person's heart? Is that part, should it be a part, I don't know, of police training? Should it be a part of everyone's training? You know, whatever walk of life, whatever job you take up. You know, again, I'm speaking big picture here. Love your neighbor as yourself. What does that actually really mean? It boils down to that, I think.
And I think you're asking really great big picture questions, and I'm curious, how would you like that information to be provided? Is it like the EPD provide a presentation on kind of the process of training and what that content includes, or is it that they provide all of the information and we kind of read through it?
Post their syllabus. What's the interviewing process like? Yeah.
How is it assessed? How is it measured? How is the training measured?
Hi, Carol. Sorry I'm late.
Welcome, Member Bailey, and welcome, Member Blauerick. We are currently just going around the room and the virtual room and asking everyone to, one, say why they're interested in being part of this subcommittee, and two, share any personal or lived experience related to the subcommittee. So thank you, Tish, for sharing and really great questions that you're proposing. Now I'm wondering if any others would like to share. No, Kevin, Shimon.
Okay, well, I have something to add.
Please.
Okay. I know our group is on training, but like Tish mentioned, we don't have a clue what kind of training they go through. Elgin currently has an interview process going on. They posted something today that they're looking for officers. I read through that, and I read through the requirements to be an officer. And, you know, we do have a college course at Elgin Community College that trains officers. So getting more information on that kind of thing would give us a better input on what kind of training they're given before they can even go to the interview. Because they have to, I believe they have to finish police academy or something along that line to even be in the interview process. So I'm currently trying to find out what kind of textbooks and things that they use, what kind of curriculum they actually have that they present to the people that come to this class. I know Chief Zally teaches it, and she's invited me to come and see the class. So I'm going to try to hook up and sit in on at least one class. Training is really important, but like Tish said, you can't train someone's heart. Sadly, racism is rampant in our country. And I don't know how you look at an applicant and say ho, you know, are you going to be a racist on this job? I really don't envy the process of trying to interview these people.
Sounds like there's a lot of interest in just understanding the process and like really deep diving and having maybe a meeting, like one of the meetings can be where we can ask a lot of questions to the chief and then just about this process and kind of prepare for that with what kind of questions we would like to ask so the chief can be prepared for a presentation like that.
And then if I may add, is racism the one personality quality or flaw or trait or however you want to describe it that would precipitate negative events? Or is it another kind of personality characteristic? I don't know that. I mean, certainly in recent events, I'd be quick to say, yeah, it's racism. Or is it just plain old hatred? I don't know that. You know, what
What is the difference between hatred and racism? What is the difference between hatred and racism?
Yeah.
And homophobia and misogyny. It's all hatred. It's all not understanding people. And, you know, the whole love your neighbor thing doesn't look like it works as well as it should.
Yeah, I'm really not on this committee. I was just sitting in, but when you're talking about training and retention and all the other things that you're talking about, I think that one of the things that is very vital when you're talking about training, I think somebody maybe alluded to it, that if in fact that every job I've been on, they've told me to act professionally. I think the whole thing is if you treat everybody professionally, and this is one of the things I had, and I know Sergeant Lally is on here, and I'm pretty sure she was in the force when I went down and talked with Chief, the other chief who was not Sabota, but before Sabota, Womack. I went down and told some Womack when I had 45 complaints of African-American males who they was just pulling over, throwing down on the ground and searching them and trying to see what they have. And also, and one of those was my son, who is an outstanding citizen, who had he had come back from the NIU, one of the top football players at NIU. He had went to some type of gathering out at the old Holiday Inn there. And somehow, some way, I guess there was some trouble out there. However, they pulled him over. They wanted to tear my car up and search my car for drugs. And he started telling them, I don't do drugs. So I came out and said, hey, you know, you can't do that. This is my car. You know, I'm not giving you permission to do that. However, the only thing I said to her, Chief Womack, and said to Deputy Beater, and the rest of the deputy was there, Sabota was there as a chief deputy. I said to them, just act professionally. Do you do everybody like that across the board? No, you know, and they admitted they did not. So, you know, if they act professionally and train professionally across the board, then you could see it. However, that's not done, and most specifically in our community. I hope it's done now, you know, with the George Floyd and everybody seeing it. But, you know, this has been going on for years in our community. And I know somebody said, well, you know, when you're talking about racial profiling or whatever, you know, we need to look at the police community, look at that. That's, you know, that's hogwash. You ain't got no statistic of police people being pulled over and nobody else like they pull over African Americans. Look at your arrest rates with the small minority of African Americans that you got here. So it got to be training in racial and cultural diversity. You got to. If you do not, then, you know, we're really not doing what we need to do. You know, there is a problem in this country in racial diversity and with police officers. Maybe it's because of the media, maybe the things that they see. I don't know, but there's a fright of specifically African American males when they pull over on for who they are. You know, many times that they are not treated right and fairly, specifically when they ask. You all need to get to the professor at Northwestern. Professor at Northwestern, he asked over 1,000 police officers, specifically white police officers, what is your problem when you pull over African Americans, specifically males? They said the problem is they have no right to question us. The same professor, white professor, psychologist, he asked, when a white citizen you pull over, they ask you that, do you have a problem with them? He said no. Now there's something in that. There's something in that.
Thank you, Pastor.
No.
I really appreciate, and we really appreciate your lived experiences. And I just wanted to make sure that the other members of the subcommittee had a chance to go around
Be good,
and
Maxine,
share.
Mama, see when she gets home.
Penny, is there something you wanted to add? No, I think she meant to mute herself. I just wanted to make sure that Kevin and Shimon, you're next on kind of sharing about why you want to be part of this subcommittee, and then share any lived experiences you've had, and then we can go to you, Ishmael. I see your hand is up after.
I'm sorry, I forgot to mute.
No worries.
Well, I'll go. Well, I want to be a part of this community because I think there's so much that comes from training. I think that by properly training officers, you can create the culture, you can create the climate. All those things are byproducts of training. I think the way that officers are trained, how they're taught to respond to different situations, I think that's very, very important, very, very critical. How they interact with the public. You know, maybe we can provide some insight as to how we feel as a citizen that when we interact with the police, and provide some insight in that area to help train, to provide better training. You know, what are they trained upon? What resources are they trained to use in different situations? As for me personally, in my professional life, I train, hire, retain. Do we check in with officers 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months into the job to see if they still feel the same way that they feel initially when coming onto the police force? And so that's what I would like to be able to look at, to see within the subcommittee.
Is there any personal or lived experiences you would like to share that in regards, like, I know you said this is something you've done and do in your personal life.
Well, it just more or less interacting, how they've dealt with situations in the past. When kids are younger, or are they trained to treat them as criminals, or are they treat them as young kids, making a mistake? Because I think there's something in how the first initial reaction or interaction with police forms how you think of the police, forms how you carry yourself around the police.
Thank you for sharing. And then Kevin, I think you're the last to go.
Yeah, thank you. I'm interested in joining this because, just kind of like everyone, I'm interested in knowing the metrics and learning the incentives of the, training, hiring, retention, all of that of the department. And then just kind of my 2 cents. I think it's going to be quite insightful to learn about the many roles that police department plays. I know that we hear that police officers have a job too. It's a difficult job as well. And I understand that. But perhaps we're making it difficult on them as well. And so we envision police officers to be a hero, our protector. We envision them to be able to be competent in like mental health services. We envision them to do community service afterwards in other various ways. And so when does the role of the officer end? And I think that's just a question that we should ask as a task force and re-envision that role.
Great, thank you for sharing. I think there is two people's hands raised, so it's Ishmael and then Congresswoman Powell.
If you can go to Councilwoman Powell, I'll speak after her. That's no problem.
Sure, thanks, Ishmael. I just wanted to kind of provide some context. This is a huge area that we're trying to tackle together. I think once we really get into this, we'll probably see that we may have to break this up into two different subcommittees because training all by itself is going to be a lot. But I wanted to bring a couple things to folks' attention. I know some of you may be aware, but some may not be. We have a fire and police commission that is comprised of the fire chief, the police chief, and 4 citizens that are appointed by the city council that is responsible for the police and fire selection process, hiring our initial police officers and our initial firefighters and paramedics. They are not involved in the promotional process. They're only involved in the initial evaluation and hiring process. At some point, it may be helpful to have, some of those folks come in and tell us, their perspective and some insights that they may have. But I wanted to bring that up and make sure people were aware of that. They interview the officers. There's a psych exam that is used. And I've heard some people talk about that or ask about that. And I think one of the things that, again, sticking with this area that we're looking at, how is that exam, how is it validated? When is the last time we changed it and it was reviewed? How does it, and again, listening to some of the questions and some of the comments that people have said, how does that psych exam or the interview process, how do we identify racial bias tendencies, or are we able to do that with our test? Or is there a test that's out there that is better at identifying that than what we're currently using? I think that's something we should be looking at. Residency is not currently required right now of our officers when we hire them, but it is something that has been brought up in the past. That's something I think that this board should weigh, this subcommittee and ultimately the full task force needs to weigh in on. The requirements of our police officers. Chief Lally gave a presentation at one of our council meetings within the past couple of months, looking to change the hiring requirements of our police officers. We kind of intentionally waited to make a recommendation on that, knowing that the task force was being formed, because we felt that that was something that this task force would want to weigh in on. And right now, we're one of the few police departments in the state that still requires a bachelor's degree. So I believe the chief was interested in removing that and putting some other requirements in place in order for us to remain competitive. That's also something that falls within this area that we should be looking at. Mental health checks for officers. I believe that may have been covered as part of some of the recent criminal justice reform legislation that was passed at the state level. I know it was something that came up, but I believe that there was something in there that was included. But that is something that I believe I've heard from the public and questions about, hey, how often is something like that checked with our officers? So I just, in terms of promotions, just getting to that point, promotions are done. The police and fire commission is not involved in promotions. That's all done within the department in terms of it'll be the chief and probably some of her command staff that will interview folks and make those decisions. And there's usually testing involved in that process. For example, for people looking to become sergeants and lieutenants, moving up, into the different ranks. So I just wanted to kind of throw some of that information out there as we look at this very broad subcommittee and bring folks up to speed. If Chief Lally, if you can think of anything in particular that we can put in the shared folder to help assist the subcommittee, I think it would be helpful. And for Kearns and West, definitely, I think this is an area, I mean, just like with our other subcommittee, to provide some best practices that are taking place across our country around testing, around hiring and recruitment that, you know, we should be looking at as we have these discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief, would you like to respond or, yep, please?
Yeah, Ishmael, do you want me to go or do you want to speak or, okay. So just real quick, there was some information that was provided to the subcommittee members in the document that's in the box folder for you guys. And some of the information is specific to training, what we do, what's required by law now through the Safety Act that was passed in July 1st of 2021. So that gives you more of a substance of what's in our policies and procedures. What I would recommend, just in hearing some of the questions about training, how we train, what we train, you know, the overview of the hiring process. It's a long process. There's psychological exams that are involved. There's metrics for certain type of identifiers and key characteristics that look at whether this person has a high indicator of that they possibly would use excessive force or some type of racism. So I think, and just, there's a lot in that document, but it's very policy specific. So what I can do for your next meeting, if you'd like, is just give a more kind of robust overview of how that hiring process works from the minute somebody submits an application. And then also talk a little bit about, you know, our training, which is inclusive of mandated training by the state, what's required, our in-service training that we do out of state, and give you guys some kind of a feel for, you know, the type of classes officers have to go through, maybe provide some, you know, sample training material to allow you guys to take a look at that. And additionally, you know, Councilwoman Powell had talked about mental health check-ins that are required. There's something in the law that passed. It was actually January 1st of this year. We're still waiting for some guidance from the Illinois Training and Standards Board about what that looks like. And so that's a whole nother component too, because the training that is required for an officer to become certified as a police officer, and then what's then required for them to remain certified is also guided by the Illinois State Training and Standard Board. So that's something that the police department, you know, we are outside of that purview, but we have to adhere to their standards. So I can provide more information. I would definitely say look at the sources and the data that was given in the document that's in box, and then I can give kind of maybe a high level review at the next meeting, which I think would be helpful because it would probably hit on a lot of what you guys are talking about.
I want to check in here with the subcommittee members. Does that sound like a good next step for everyone? I'm seeing some nods. Okay. And I would like and ask for everyone is to, you all did provide lots of great questions, and we are taking notes, and we would provide those notes to everyone. But if there's any like questions that you would really like that are very specific that you would like the chief to address, please send those to the facilitation team, and we'll make sure that the chief has that so she can be as effective and efficient as possible for our next meeting. And then I'm gonna go to Ishmael. I know you had some questions or comments.
I necessarily had some questions, and I apologize, I'm a little shaky. It's really cold in City Hall for some reason. The first comment that I had was really for the whole group. So these two comments are primarily for the group and for the subcommittee. when we refer to the issues that are really impacting us as community members, the one thing that I really would like everyone to realize is that there needs to be a policy or procedure that a police officer has to be violating in order for them to be held accountable. That's really and necessarily, that's how laws are created. That someone had to break something or the community had to realize something was wrong for a law or a policy to be put into place. So that's really something really important. So if we realize something that is a continuous issue, or we hear that it's a continuous issue and there's no policy or procedure that protects us from that behavior, that's something that we need to really come up with and create recommendations for the whole task force. I think that's something that we need to look for when we're really doing our own research and that we're moving forward with our recommendations. We need to be sure that these are going to be very strong recommendations and that are going to be applicable in an aspect of either promotion, termination, hiring, etc. Because that's where it gets put into the gray area, and then we get into these issues, especially when it comes to termination. Police officers have a high level of protection when it comes to termination, and if there is really no policy or procedure, and this is primarily, for example, a behavior that happened while they were not on the clock, while they were not wearing their uniform, for example, they behaved inappropriately, drunk driving or something like that. It's just an example. It has to be applicable to both in and outside of the uniform to really see a positive change moving forward in our community. So that's necessarily one comment that I wanted to make for all of us to kind of think about as we move forward in this subcommittee. And then the second comment that I wanted all of us to really think about is oftentimes, especially during this task force that we've talked about, racism is an issue. We all know it is an issue, but oftentimes we think about it as a metaphorical and a literal white and black issue. The city of Elgin is plagued by Black individuals having a racist connotation of Brown or Latinx individuals and vice versa. Especially in the height of coronavirus, we've seen an anti-Asian stereotypes and anti-Asian rhetoric being implemented throughout our community. So we also need to consider that when we're moving forward in these processes, that racism is really applicable to so many other marginalized communities, and including, like, women are treated definitely differently. LGBT folks are treated differently. These are all things that we should really incorporate, and hopefully we can tie that in with the racial and other disparity subcommittee and really tie that information into what we're going to be recommending moving forward. But those are primarily two of the things that I got from when we were having these conversations that I would really like the subcommittee to chew on as we move forward. Thank you.
No, thank you. Just wanted to kind of echo what Tish Powell said about just how big this topic is. We are looking at multiple, like just training on its own is a massive take, and then there's the recruitment and all of the other categories. One suggestion is that we first focus on training and kind of do a deep dive on that and kind of identify what our recommendations will be. And as a reminder, our process is as we have recommendations, we will start presenting those to the council. And it's a periodical thing, not waiting until the end. And then kind of doing so this will be a two-parter, being part one being training, and then kind of focusing all of our effort on the other categories. That's just one suggestion. I'm just providing it so we can start a dialogue. So I don't know what the subcommittee members' reactions is to that, or if you have any other alternatives on just a process moving forward to make sure that we're very efficient and kind of focused on what we're talking about. Tish? Sorry, Tish Palmer.
Tish. The other fabulous Tish?
Yes.
I think it makes sense to start with training chronologically. Start with when an officer first joins the force, has interviewed, what have you. So I think that's a good structure to follow, from day one until they retire or they're let go for whatever reason. So I think focusing on training first. Who are we getting? Hiring and training. Who are we getting and how are we training them and how are they going to serve the community?
Thank you. Ishmael?
I'm so sorry. I just had a really quick question. Chronologically, wouldn't recruitment be first and then hiring and then training?
Yes,
would think
that's what I
so.
said,
I mean-
recruitment, hiring, training.
Okay, I just want to be sure. I was like, I didn't
Yes,
know.
yes,
that-
kind of the
Okay.
the early stages, and then let's not talk about retirement just yet if we have not talked about.
Okay, I just
so,
wanted to be sure.
yeah,
I just didn't want us
exactly.
to like miss that part. Okay.
Yeah, we're on the same page.
So how does that approach sound to others? Just wanted to kind of give an opportunity for, Kevin, Penny, others, if you have any other suggestions or if you're in agreement.
I'm in agreement.
Great. So it sounds like we will focus first on recruitment. So just kind of to where, like from the beginning, like if there's a job post and how does that approach until the very end of the process. Great. So I think, so we do have an idea of what our next call will be about in a meeting, kind of having a presentation from the chief on that whole process. And then with an ask that you review all the material that's in the box beforehand. And if you have any specific questions that you would like to address or be answered, to send that to the facilitation team beforehand, so we can just be as efficient. And reminding everyone that the goal is to identify and some recommendations on how to improve this whole process. So keep that in mind as we could learn more and deep dive into this. We do have only a few more minutes for this first meeting. I did want to kind of get a interest on timing for and just frequency of these calls. We would like them to be standing. I just want to know if this time is that works for everyone, and kind of just in terms of frequency, how would that work?
And Sarah, if I could just briefly chime in, this is Larry Schooler. Because we have, I know, Task Force members Brockway, Powell, of course, Task Force member Flickama, Task Force member Calamar serving on this and the prior committee. Perhaps the prior committee could do like a 5 to 6:30, and this committee might do 6:30 to 8 or something. I mean, I'm not saying we can't limit it to an hour, but I think there might be weeks where having an hour and a half would be helpful for the subcommittee, and I'd hate for anybody to be missing anything. So if this general Thursday evening was consistently feasible, if the subcommittee would be open to that kind of slight shift, that might make things a little bit more logistically easy.
Great.
And how often are you looking at? Weekly, every other week?
Well,
Yeah, and more of a subcommittee question, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a question to the subcommittee on frequency of this meeting. So how often we have our task force meetings were on a bi-weekly basis, and do you think that's a good or do you want it to be on a weekly? Then does that work with everyone's schedules? So just kind of asking everyone here on frequency.
Well, if we alternate weeks, then we would have 1 week on subcommittees and then the next week, the committee of the whole. I think that would probably work out. What do the rest of you think?
In my opinion, I think that all of these meetings are really going to be accommodating to whatever we need to be. So I think obviously the every other week meetings are working fine for us, but I think that these subcommittees really need to start doing these work. And I think that the only way we'll be able to do that work is doing it weekly. I think that we just need to move forward with this. Time is ticking and we need to get through it right away. We're all not going to be at every meeting, unfortunately, and things are going to come up, but we need to get to the work. So I would highly recommend just going to weekly. And then if we need to adjust the regular task force schedule where all 18 of us are there, then we should just do that.
But wasn't the task force, the committee on the whole meeting at 6?
It is at 6 to 8, but again, you know, the subcommittees are on a separate thing. So
Right,
we need to figure
so,
out
but
what's
that's
gonna
every
work best
other
for
week.
everybody.
So if on the off weeks, the committee meets, the subcommittee meets, then you have like the 5 o'clock and the 6 o'clock. We're not going to be able to meet weekly unless we switch from Thursdays to whatever other day.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that both meetings can be accommodated with the schedule. So if we think that we should meet every week, the group can decide to change the regular task force meeting to a different day that would work best for all of us too. So all of these meetings are able to be accommodated if needed.
Well, we'd have to meet this, we'd have to change the subcommittee date, I think.
Yeah, well, again, I just think that we need
Which
to.
is possible. Otherwise,
Doesn't matter what day it is, just do it.
Yeah,
weekly. That's my
if we do
recommendation.
Thursdays, we're on an alternating week.
Right, so we
schedule.
can find another day, and then we can also have these on a weekend if that works with the subcommittee. So if the subcommittee decides that we need to meet on a weekly basis, the facilitation team can follow up to identify a time that works with everyone. Would like to hear from maybe the other members of the subcommittee on just how often you would like to meet.
Yeah, let's not all jump in at once, folks. I mean,
Can we
this
just
is-
go by like each name and we just say weekly or bi-weekly? Can we just go that way?
Yeah,
Sure.
a decision has to be made.
So, Shimon, would you like to start? Would you like to meet weekly?
Start. I'll stick it out there. I'm available for weekly meetings, but I'm retired. So whatever y'all can work out, I really have this feeling that we're walking through some deep mud and we haven't really accomplished a lot yet. So a weekly meeting might get us moving along a little bit more. But a lot of other people aren't retired and they have lives. So, but I'm open for the weekly meetings.
Thank you. Shimon?
I vote bi-weekly. I prefer to meet bi-weekly.
Aubrey?
I think I'd prefer bi-weekly with maybe a little bit of a longer meeting time than an hour. Maybe 90 minutes.
Penny?
I agree. I prefer bi-weekly with maybe a little bit of a longer meeting time.
Thank you. Kevin?
I'm indifferent between weekly or bi-weekly with Aubrey's suggestion.
Thank you. Josh?
I go for bi-weekly with the expectation that we're also reading through a bunch of the stuff that's in the box that we keep getting politely reminded to go read.
Thank you. So Tish and then Ishmael, kind of just final say on this.
I would prefer bi-weekly, which actually means a weekly commitment to the work of this task force. And as Joshua said, of course, keep up with our homework assignments and read what's in the box. Otherwise, if we really wanted to do truly weekly, I think we would have to pick another weekday. Otherwise, it would conflict with the committee of the whole.
Ishmael?
I don't care as long as the meetings are productive. So let's go with whatever the group decides.
So there was, thank you. So it seems like we will be meeting on a bi-weekly basis with at least 90 minutes and an ask and an emphasis on doing the in-between work, which is reading what's the materials in the box or reading the notes that are being developed, and then sending any information or thoughts or questions or ideas on recommendations to the facilitation team, because we are gathering everything from all of the subcommittees. Well, I want to really,
I had one last question or request. I just was wondering if by any chance at our next meeting or whenever we start talking about recruitment, if we can actually get the actual recruiting coordinator for the police department, because I know the chief doesn't do that. So if we can actually have the HR representative or the recruitment coordinator, there so we can ask them that specific questions, I would greatly appreciate that.
Okay, thanks. Well,
Another recommendation I'd like to recommend is, and I don't know if you want to do this at the same meeting, but since we do have citizens that are also involved with the Fire and Police Commission, as well as the chief, I think it would be an interesting dynamic to bring some of those folks in or invite them to participate in the meeting to hear their perspective on the recruitment and hiring and selection process. A lot of them, some of them are fairly new to the commission, but some of them have been on the commission for a number of years and have seen evolution. So as the chief obviously is kind of laying out that process of, how we advertise, the testing process, just that whole very long process that it takes to hire a police officer. Having those citizens that are part of that, I think would be valuable and interesting and helpful for this group. So again, not to say that we can or should do that as part of the same meeting. I don't know. I want, obviously we need time for folks to ask questions and interact. Maybe it's two separate meetings, but I think when we get to that point, I would recommend including the Fire and Police Commission in that process if they want to be involved, just at least making that invitation available to them.
No, thank you for that suggestion. We are a couple minutes late to, I was hoping we can get this done in an hour, but I think this was a very productive first meeting. So I thank everyone. And we already have an idea and structure for our next meeting. So we will, and frequency and time. So we will be sending out a meeting invite that's standing for everyone, and then a agenda for our next meeting. Larry, is there anything else you would like to add?
Just thanks to Sheila Brown for note-taking tonight. She's pulled double duty on that. We appreciate it. Thanks to Sarah for facilitating, and to Chief Lally for being with us as well, and for all of your efforts, subcommittee.
Thanks, everyone, and hope your night reading is looking at everything that's in the box. Well, bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, thank you.